So in 1994, Rod Stewart gave a legendary concert on Copacabana Beach in Rio de Janeiro. And it wasn't legendary because of the music, although the music is fine if you're into Rod Stewart. It was legendary because between 4 and 5 million people showed up, making it the best attended concert in human history. Now, between 4 and 5 million people, that's an interesting number because that is exactly the number of people that were alive on our planet in 10,000 before Christ, at the dawn of the agricultural revolution. The agricultural revolution, by many considered to be the first truly disruptive cultural event in human existence. If Rod Stewart would have given this concert in 10,000 before Christ, he would have had the entire human population right there in front of him. The rest of the planet would have been completely empty of people. Now, obviously, things have changed since then. For every person alive in 10,000 before Christ, there are more than 1,500 people alive today. Every village of 1,000 turned into a city of 1.5 million. We're witnessing an unprecedented quantity of human flesh. And never before was there so much desire ready to evade and absorb what is left of non-human life. What happened? To what signals did we respond? And what signals did we choose to ignore? What led to this complete proliferation of Homo sapiens? I mean, what were the stories we told each other to end up occupying so much of everything? Rod Stewart steps forward and starts to sing a song by Curtis Mayfield.
People get ready, there's a train a-coming. You don't need no ticket, you just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesels humming. Don't need no ticket.
There's this beautiful picture, a photograph of Ulay. He made it in 1979. And I've always felt attracted to it, drawn to it. It's magical, mythical. It's called Aboriginal After Images. And always when I see it, it brings me back to a specific moment in time. I was in South Africa. I had almost finished my work and studies there. And Mama Kenna, one of the elders I worked with, a friend of mine, invited me to come to her home. And it felt like a special invitation. It was not just come and have dinner with me. She invited me with a purpose, but I didn't know what. I could feel it, I could sense it. So I went with her. We drove up to Limpopo, north of Joburg, and we drove into the bush. And there we came to her village. A village with all those rondavels. Beautiful huts, round huts with these conical tops. And she said to me, "Are you ready?" I said, "Yeah, I think so." Don't know for what I had to be ready, but I know if someone in Africa asks you that, you say, "Yes, I'm ready." And she walked with me into the bush. And we walked, and then we entered a cave. And we went deep into the cave. It was pitch dark in the cave. And she took me there, and she said, "Well, I'm going to leave you now. You just stay here until I come and get you." And I said, no, I don't want to do that. But I know Mama Kenna and I had to stay. So I stayed in that cave, being silent, being frightened, hearing all those noises. A little mouse, a rat maybe, a snake, oh my God, or even bigger. I don't want to go there. I didn't want to go there. So I tried to be and stood still as possible. Because I know if you're standing still, the animals will not come to you. And after a while, I got used to the silence. Still couldn't see anything. But I even had a brief moment that I experienced the beauty of it, that I wasn't afraid. I don't know how long I've been there. An hour, 2 hours, 10 minutes, half a day, no idea. Mama Gerda came and got me. And she saw me and she said, "Now you're ready." I said, okay, I'm ready. Not knowing for what. And then she took me to her rendezvous, a totally empty round space. We sat on the ground and she handed me a little bag filled with, I don't know what yet. And she asked me to hold it for a while. And then she took it back. She hustled and she threw the things inside of the bag on the floor. There were bones, little bottle caps, coins, stones, all kind of rubbish, I would say. She was reading me the bones. And she went over it and she told me loads of stories. I didn't remember them all, but there was one that stayed with me, that still is in my heart. She gave me an assignment. She said, the stones or the bones are telling me that you came to Africa for a reason. And that's not just the reason for you, but there is a reason for the community, for the world that you came here. Because you experienced the African indigenous life. You experienced how we think, how we feel, how we work, how we are. And we need a bridge between our way of thinking and our worldview and yours. We need that bridge to heal the world. And your work is to build that bridge between science and the indigenous, between economics and the social, between culture and nature. Because all of that is one, and we tend to forget that. She was forceful in her message. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to. I felt like those women on this picture of Ulay. They come out of a ritual, out of a ceremony too. And they are kind of, well, you have been somewhere else than where you normally are. And you know you experienced something special, but you have no clue how to go from there. So you're in the dark. You're on the edge of something. You're looking for, I don't know what. And that's how I came out of that meeting with Mama Kenna. And I'm still kind of in the dark what exactly she asked me to do.
A figure in black and white steps onto the stage and steps in front of humanity. Some may recognize him as Buster Keaton, genius comedian of the silent movie era. Under his arm is a financial newspaper, and as he stands in front of the crowd, he opens it up and opens it up again. And again. And again. Now well beyond the control of a single man, yet for a moment supported by the breeze, it hovers around his head like a paper cloud. For a moment, he is a sorcerer, a wizard, the abstract promise of something truly magical. The ever-expanding newspaper somehow representing the ever-expanding reach of humanity. Which brings me to the word growth, the central belief in our current economic system, continuous growth. The word growth is rooted in the Proto-Germanic word gru, which means something like the land becoming green again in the beginning of spring. In itself, surely a moment that ignites all sorts of feelings of happiness and excitement. Dreams of good times ahead. A little magic, rooted in the experienced reality of the cycle of life and of the seasons. Gru, green, growth. Growth. By giving a word to this specific moment in time and then extracting it from that particular context and time frame, as alphabet-based languages tend to do, its meaning and our intimate understanding of it mutated and was corrupted. Gru originally takes place in relation to what went before and what will come after. It relates to spring as much as it relates to winter, summer, and fall. Growth is growth precisely because of its relationship with the absence of growth. It means something because it is not always there. Continuous growth can only exist within disconnected, corrupted language. Growth itself became an object, a product, isolated, left to only celebrate itself. Eternal spring. This corrupted understanding of growth, disconnected as it has become from its natural environment of checks and balances, still carries a powerful capacity to inspire a sense of excitement, of promise, of childlike joy. Gru!
When I look at Ulay's picture, I always see those two women. One being a little bit hesitant, more afraid to step into the dark or to step over the edge. And the one in the front is more bold, as if she's ready to take it on. I've been more hesitant the last few years, not really taking the calling of Mama Kenna on. But I think I might be ready. I might be ready to be bold and to step into it. That also has to do with a conversation I had with Arne. Arne is a friend of mine. I work with her for a long time already. And she came to me. And she asked me for advice. So I listened. And Arne said, "Listen, Godelieve, I like my job. I really do. It was my dream to work in the fashion industry. And I am head of procurement. I'm doing purchasing all the materials, all the textiles and the fabrics that we use in our company from all over the world. I traveled to India, to Bangladesh, even to Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya. And I love it when I see the beauty that is created over there. But I saw more. And that kind of confuses me. I saw women with bleeding hands because they worked in the water and the dye all day. I saw people that turned white from their waist down because they were standing in the bleach all day. I saw rivers turning red because of the dye factories that were alongside the river. I saw children behind sewing machines, and I saw poverty. Loads and loads of poverty. So we were not bringing well-being over there. We just brought misery. And I can't do it anymore. I have a feeling I have to change something about it. And I don't know how. I tried talking with my boss. I tried to reason with him. I tried to say, let's buy from smaller companies. Let's pay them more. Let's increase our prices. Let's negotiate the way they work and the circumstances they work in. And although he was very willing to think with me and to help me and to bring it forward, we both somehow felt squeezed by the economic system. The system that forces you to grow, that forces you to minimize your costs, in a way that forces you to exploit people. And it hurts me more and more. And I never understood my mom, because she was always saying that money is hurtful, that the economy in a way was hurtful. And I didn't understand her. But nowadays, I kind of learn from the stories she told me. You know, my mom is rich. Not rich. She's rich, or even rich. The money she has, well, she can live for 10 lives with all of us affluently, in total wealth. But she doesn't do that. She lives a very simple life, as we all do. Well, her father earned his money by starting a business. But he wasn't successful at once. Actually, most of her youth she spent in poverty, her mother tying the ends together, while her father was trying one initiative after the other, looking for that one hole in the market, for that one thing that would make him rich, that would turn him from a newspaper boy into a multi-millionaire. And he found that formula. He started a retail company with a very, very innovative formula. It's spread over all the world. There are hundreds, thousands of shops everywhere in the world. You should think, and good all good. But that was not the case. His work, his way of being, the way he left his family, kind of hurt the family. He died 25 years ago already. He died young. He worked too hard. He drank too much. He was aggressive. He was never home. Actually, my mom and her sisters and her brother never really knew him. When he died, they inherited all that money. There's a thing there. The four sisters inherited 1/3 of the money. The single brother inherited the rest. They all have enough. That's not the point. But there is something in there that still kind of makes that family unhappy. It's like a continuous Christmas dinner with all those tensions, you know, in the Christmas dinners. And I'm starting to understand why she is so busy to spend her money to do the right thing. She spends it on charity. She calls it, I tried to put love in that money, to spread love with it, to compensate the pain and the aggression where it comes from, that is in it now. My mom feels squeezed by the economic system, as I do. And I feel there is a need that I have to change it, but I don't know how. I listened to Arne, and I could feel her despair, and I could feel her eagerness to really change it, to do something. But I didn't know quite where to start. How do you change a system? And that's the moment that the calling from Mama Kenna came back to me. I remembered her message that I had to bridge different knowledge systems, that I had to reach out from economics to society, that I had to bring in the indigenous in science, that nature and culture actually are intertwined. So because of Arne, I started looking for a new perspective on the work that I've been doing for years. I'm going to try to find ways to build those bridges and to see if there's an opening or if there's a lens to look at our economy in a different way.
In the town of Almolonga in Nicaragua, people take particular pride in the growing of very large carrots. In itself a seemingly innocent practice, were it not for the fact that the farmers growing them see the large carrot as a direct sign from God. The bigger the carrot, the better God's opinion of you. In this prosperity gospel, God is in the carrot. But in fact, this promise of abundance is central to all our most important religious texts. From the land of milk and honey in the Torah, to Al-Qatar in the Quran, or Jesus turning water into wine in the Bible. All you need is faith to hear the diesels humming. Growth is not the result of natural circumstance, time and space, but of faith and divine intervention. Bestowed upon some and not on others. We seem to need a sign that we're doing well. Growth is the cuddly toy allowing us to go to sleep. But if you have a small carrot, a few years ago, while I was artist in residence at Rabobank in the Netherlands, something happened that sort of perfectly illustrates this macabre dance we dance with the symbols of growth. As part of my research, I presented 85 posters with an assortment of stories related to the notion of shrinking the human body, shrinking our consumption, shrinking the economy. And on one of those posters, there was a red arrow pointing upwards, which was sort of meant as a warning, red of course being a symbol of danger, etc., and a green arrow pointing downwards. I proposed it as a better alternative. So anyway, we opened up the exhibition, 85 posters, that one poster being part of it, and when I returned a few days later, I was surprised to find that someone had switched the poster around. The green arrow now pointing upwards, returning, so to say, things back to normal. Or perhaps thinking I'd made a mistake, perhaps wanting to help me. So, I repositioned the slide, only to find that the next day it had been turned around again. And 1 week later, it happened again. And it continued to do so over the entire course of the exhibition. In the end, I never even found out with whom I was having this silent battle of wills. But it speaks volumes to me, especially in the environment of a bank. It was as if somehow the invisible bank worked its magic. This is who we are, forever. Let's for a moment return to Buster's act of continuous unfolding. Remember, we left him in a moment of the magical promise of abundance. Yet, where in terms of growth and economics we are willing to infinitely suspend our disbelief, in Buster's unfolding we sense how this will end. Despite his skillful display, the inevitable cannot be avoided. And as the wind recedes, the newspaper comes crashing down, wrapping our black and white hero in a crumbled pile of skin-colored paper, becoming the perfect illustration that the bigger something becomes, the more complex it is, and that complex systems are vulnerable.
Looking at Ulay's picture, in the middle there's a strange thing. It's a white kind of canvas with a woman coming out. At least that is what it seems to me. That's what I imagine it to be. It reminds me of another picture of Ulay in the same series. It's a desert, and there's all filled with screens, with pictures of women on it. It's beautiful. When I look at it, it feels like a background for dance, for movement. There's something funny that happens to me when I move or when I dance. Another type of understanding comes to me. My body understands things that my mind doesn't understand, and vice versa, of course. But somehow, my body is able to communicate with nature, with people, with what is to come. There's an interesting thing. Movement or dance is a language that understands what's coming. It's never going back, it's always going forward. It's always looking into the future somehow. It's that type of movement and it's that type of dance that reminds me it must be possible to find a way to start a business or to do business in relationship with nature, taking care of nature, communicating with nature, being part of it. And that's when I went and talked to Geert van der Veer. He designed a format of community farming. I became a member of it. It's kind of simple. There's 500 people, more or less 200 households, and we work together with a farmer, with a bunch of pigs and cows and chicken, with the fruit trees, with the cabbage, with the carrots, with everything that is planted. And all of us together take care of the soil, take care of the earth that provides us with food. We're not taking care of the carrots. The carrots help us to take care of the soil. And it works. And every Saturday I go there and I pick up my vegetables and my potatoes and everything I need to feed me and my family. I love it. And each of those farms has a fixed size. It's just, well, we have a common pot and we bring in some money. It's 10 euros a week or something. And from that money, we can buy the seeds, we can buy the equipment, we can lease the land, and we can pay the farmer. And all that comes of the land, we share. If you make it bigger, or if you allow it to grow, we would have totally different discussions with each other. What bothers us now most, actually, is whether the snails eat our cabbage or our salad, or whether the fox run in and kill our chickens. That are the kind of trouble that we have to solve. But what if we were talking about growing, about making it a big farm? Then we would talk about investments. Then we would talk about who was going to invest and what we were going to invest in, and who was going to get the revenues. And that would kind of make a situation that is totally equal right now, because we're all in it and we all have a vote. But if one invests more than the other, that will kind of mess it up. So I'm so happy that it's just one size. It's this size and that's the right size. And we live with that. Yeah. And it's really working and living with nature. I experience that when I'm on the farm and I'm walking around. I really feel more connected to the land than I have ever felt. It's my body moving through it that gives me the information, it gives me the sensation of how things should be. Maybe that is a concept that we could apply on the cotton industry, making collectives. I know in India there are some workers' cooperatives that are actually trying to grow the cotton in a cooperative, working with nature, working with communities, making an earnest living, a good living. Maybe I should talk with Arne about this, to see if we can persuade her boss to work with such cooperatives, or maybe even to become one.
Science journalist Deborah McKenzie writes, "It appears that once a society develops beyond a certain level of complexity, it becomes increasingly fragile. Eventually, it reaches a point at which even a relatively minor disturbance can bring everything crashing down. To keep growing, societies must keep solving problems as they arise. Yet each problem solved means more complexity." Famed economist Leopold Kohr, winner of the Right Livelihood Award, would certainly agree with her. In his book, The Breakdown of Nations, he writes, "Wherever something's wrong, something is too big. It is because matter has attempted to expand beyond the impassable barriers set to every accumulation. Their mass has become too big. If the human body becomes diseased, it is, as in cancer, because a cell or a group of cells has begun to outgrow its allotted narrow limits." Now, I'm aware that it's not uncommon to make this comparison between things growing out of control and cancer. The uncontrolled doubling of cells in a tumor very much resonates with the uncontrollable character and loss of function as a result of exponential growth, so vividly illustrated by Buster's unfolding of the newspaper. But as I tried to find out what the comparison actually teaches us, it turned out there were no studies of the actual processes that lead to cancer in relation to processes that lead to forms of harmful economic growth. And that's why I ended up in Hans Klever's office and eventually spent quite some time at the Hubrecht Institute, a cancer research institute based in Utrecht. Now, Professor Klevers is one of our most eminent cancer researchers, but he's also a very good communicator. And I hoped he could help me learn something from cancer. My first question was about a comparison between economists and cancer researchers and their different understanding of the term continuous growth. Klaver's reply stayed with me forever. He said, well, you know, I'm a relatively intelligent and creative person, and so I can imagine and speculate about what happens inside a cell as it becomes cancerous. However, at the end of the day, I always have to return to the cell to ask if what I imagined is correct. This keeps me modest, and I sometimes doubt that economists have a similar point to which they always have to return. Did we all lose our point of reference when thinking about growth? Well, if we think of how green turned into gru and then into growth, and how this disconnected concept of growth then colonized our mental and physical space, one would definitely think so. In cancer, we experience in the flesh how corrupted growth that doesn't really relate to its context anymore, expresses itself. And we see how the body responds. It doesn't allow us to forget that we are flesh, that is intimately connected to its environment, whether we like it or not. The idea of continuous economic growth and growth in cancer both seem to be the result of corrupted language. In the use of the word growth in economics, this corruption shows itself in its disconnection from the context in which it first became meaningful. In cancer, it expresses itself through mutations in the DNA. In both instances, it ultimately meant growth could perform things that before were not possible. While the economy jumped on those new possibilities, growing the 8 billion, while those functions performed their black magic, the body got sick. What would happen if at the end of the day we, society, the economy and politics would also have to return to the cell? If we would also modestly ask if our presumptions about growth are correct? What if the growth our society so much craves would be related to a wiser system? Let's remind ourselves that the cell is over 4 billion years old, a system with the accumulative living knowledge of innumerable interactions between itself and the world. I mean, economy as a discipline is perhaps 200 or 250 years old. Even if we consider early trading and agriculture, it's relatively young. The cell has been learning by doing for over 4 billion years. It knows stuff we have barely begun to understand. Important stuff. Like how to grow a healthy, sustainable living system in balance with its environment. Homeostasis, the steady state of the body. At least most of the time. Still, several things can go wrong. Genetic mutation can lead to cancerous cells that grow into a tumor. But if it's true that we learn most from our mistakes, then let's learn from the mistakes the cell, despite its very long existence, still makes. Let's learn from cancer researchers what processes lead up to malignant growth and how they fight it.
The image of Ulay that I showed you all the time doesn't depict what I thought it was. I imagined it to be a situation after a ceremony, after a healing session, after a dance about the dream times. But it's not. It's actually a photo of the making of a series of photographs that Ulay was working on in Australia. He made them during a trip that he undertook with Marjoleine Boonstra. She was making a movie about his work and life. At first, he planned to go to Mongolia. There he met a woman, an old woman, a blind woman, that kind of hang a widescreen, inviting children to come, and then she was telling a movie while the children were looking at that widescreen, imagining whatever they saw, and they imagined while listening to the woman. I like that total freedom of kind of letting your thoughts and images float and see what comes up. And in a way, the image of Ulay is similar to that, because it shows on the left of the image you see Ulay, on the right you see the women that work with the white big screens, Polaroids actually, and they move and dance towards the screens, from the light into the dark. And based on that movement and their touching the screen, an image appears that can't be controlled, that can't be predicted. It's kind of emerges from the process. You can't design it up front. It's that type of uncertainty that I think that we need to face when we're changing the economy. Our current economy is so much about prediction and control, about knowing what's going to come. But we no longer know what is to come. We're on the verge of destruction. We're kind of in the dark again. So redefining and redesigning our economy requires something else. Ulay was working on these pictures. And when I look at these three women, they have this shape in their body, or there's this attentive kind of energy to listen to something, to listen or see or find something that they didn't know before, or that you can't find out by thinking or reasoning. Something that is emerging, something that is growing, something that might become. These women make me think of Rutendo. Rutendo is a very dear friend of mine in Africa. She's my soul sister, in fact. And she's the one that learned me to look through her lens. She's the one who taught me how to go about uncertainty from her worldview. Let me read it to you in her words. From the African indigenous worldview, I know a sense of certainty is related to a sense of connection, a sense of harmony with the whole, with all that is. So connecting with nature is the basis upon certainty is found. However, within certainty, there's always uncertainty. So that's why within the indigenous, we have ways that enable us to come closer to nature, to bring about a greater certainty, at the same time always acknowledging that uncertainty is within certainty. This also reflects in the native oracle system. If we throw the bones, you will see a pattern that represents the big in the small. We always look at the coherence of things, and based on that, you can make a statement. A statement about things that might occur, or an event or a situation that might become. It might be about your world, it might be about the greater community, or it might even be about the world. It shows the likely ways in which things ought to go or can move. The oracle shows likely ways of how something can proceed, taking into account the changing circumstances. The aim is not to come to an absolute statement. It is to give you tools to get a complete picture of a situation from a synthetic perspective and to recognize your own blind spots. There's no dichotomy between hard and soft, between fast and slow. What there is the greater ability to enter a state of softness, of uncertainty, of relaxation. And that is exactly what gives you a sense of security. That is opposite of how we look at certainty. We look at certainty by controlling it, by having linear causal relationships. What they say is just open up, just relate to the whole, and that's what gives you certainty. Give up certainty to feel certainty. Well, if we need a new economy, that's a different way to go about than creating it, designing it, and kind of building it. That's not the way to do it, maybe. That's why I'm so attracted to the Linen Project. That basically is just an invitation. It's not a format. It's just an invitation to people to join and to grow flax and to make something out of that. So there's 30 people that signed up for that experiment. We plant the flax, we weed, and we harvest it. And when we move through the field, again, it looks like choreography of a dance. The beauty is that we try to learn things from that. Interesting is that people are in it for totally different reasons. So there's people that come in and say, I want to know how flax grows. I want to know how to spin linen. I want to know how to sew a jacket. I'd like to experience what it does to me to be out in the open all day. I'd like to understand what kind of sacrifices we ask from nature while we're in the field. We're destroying things too, moving around. I'm in it to understand what a new economy is like. To see what unfolds in front of my eyes. But I'm kind of impatient. And that made things go wrong, which happens in a project like this. I started a subgroup. I wanted to know and to hold and to get a grip on what kind of economy was emerging. I wanted faster, stronger. In doing so, I excluded a bunch of people in that group. I excluded them from having their own opinions, their own ideas, to grow it with me. And it's true. I had to include them because otherwise I couldn't see what was emerging from the whole. Listening to Rutendo, it is all about love and empathy, about opening up and about relating. It's not about me isolating me and kind of designing what I see emerging. It's a collective process. It's something that, like the flags, we grow together. Growing an economy together, starting with us, with the people, with the land, with all our abilities. The interesting thing, it started to be all about flags, but over time, our little linen economy kind of grew into something bigger. We started sharing books, stories. We read and learn together. People offering tomato plants and say, oh, I have a lot of them in my garden, who wants one? People inviting other people to go to the theater or to make a performance or to start singing. That is how step by step we kind of organize our lives together. And isn't that what an economy is about? Organizing the good life together. Slowly, slowly, we take back our economy. Knowing all that, I have to go back to Anna and ask her or talk to her about this. And basically, I think I have to tell her that it's not possible to change the current and the incumbent economy or the incumbent economic system into something else. We can't just carve it out as if it's, well, a little pot or if it's designing a new airplane. No, it's something that has to come from nature and the community. It's not only that, it's also the firmness, the ability, the boldness to stand your ground, as those two women in the first picture of Ulay, the one hesitant and the other one bold, ready to make a judgment. If we need to change the system, and we do, then we can grow the new system. But at the same time, we have to stand our ground and say no to things that are happening in the current system. Exploiting people, exploiting nature, we have to say no. So here I stand, with in one hand my sword, to say no, to cut off malignant growth, to accuse people that are doing wrong. And on the other hand, opening my heart, listening to what kind of economy is growing, participating in the process of letting it emerge, of letting it come to life. This is what I call you for. Let's take back our economy.
So, in the beginning, I asked the question, to what signals did we listen as we grew towards 8 billion people? I would like to try to begin answering that question through sharing with you the various properties of cancer that were defined by two cancer researchers, Douglas Hanahan and Robert Weinberg, in their very important paper, The Hallmarks of Cancer, the 10 hallmarks of cancer. For the occasion, I call these 10 hallmarks of malignant growth. Hopefully studying them in a cultural, societal, and economic context will inspire new ways of thinking about growth and how to redesign some of our thinking and our systems. Now I will give a very short description of the 10 hallmarks and leave it up to the viewer to interpret what the cancerous cell is trying to tell us. As the cell's genes mutate, they acquire, as said, new properties. In the end, several combinations of these properties will lead to angiogenesis, the onset of malignant growth. The first hallmark is a self-sufficiency in growth signaling. Cells normally respond to growth signals from other cells before they replicate. They're waiting for a sign they should. However, malignant growth does not need an outside invitation or stimulant to increase in size. It tells itself to replicate regardless of environmental conditions. Sounds a bit like the default state in business to me. The second hallmark, insensitivity to anti-growth signals. Malignant growth does not respond to the brakes in the system. It ignores or corrupts them and makes the system insensitive to signs that things should slow down. Of course, you can understand that in a cell that normally is a very important function. But in a cancerous cell, that function is lost. The next hallmark is evading cell death. In a healthy system, things that malfunction or are corrupted are disposed of. Sick or damaged elements will sacrifice themselves for the benefit of all. Malignant growth doesn't. It evades recycling and convinces its environment to allow it to continue to function. Too big to fail, until the whole system fails with it. Hallmark 4, limitless replicative potential. Since copying information comes at a risk of making and then transferring mistakes into the DNA, most cells have a counting mechanism that makes them stop replicating after a number of divisions to limit the risk of copying for the system. Think of this as an old cassette. After 50 times copying, the message can become very distorted and might do more harm than good. Malignant growth corrupts the counting mechanism and allows for limitless replication, whatever the cost. This is replication for the replication itself, not for its original function. Hallmark number 5, sustained angiogenesis. Now, I guess it makes sense that malignant growth needs more resources than some of the cells around it. To get the resources and the energy it needs, it signals normal surrounding blood vessels to grow towards it and into the tumor. Hallmark 6, tissue invasion and metastasis. Malignant growth can travel and colonize other tissues. It's able to live off the fertile, pristine, faraway lands. And this is quite an accomplishment, since most cells are not welcome in environments where they do not belong. After metastasis, malignant growth becomes really dangerous. What stands out to me in that hallmark is obviously the word colonize. Hallmark number 7, evading immune systems. Malignant growth is able to evade the immune system by tricking it or by building resistance as it mutates, making the malignant growth even more dangerous and more difficult to destroy. Now, the immune system is highly regulated so that it doesn't attack its own healthy cells. Unfortunately, malignant growth is often quite difficult to recognize by the immune system, since it is a modified, mutated cell and often looks very, very normal. Hallmark number 8, reprogramming energy metabolism. Now, malignant growth needs a lot of energy and a lot of resources. We established that. It reprograms the cell's energy metabolism to cater to these needs. It's a little complicated to go into the chemistry here, but let's say that it's a much faster, but also a much more wasteful way to fulfill energy needs, as well as resource needs. Some of this waste is recycled and used to facilitate even more malignant growth. So that's 8 hallmarks. These first 8 hallmarks are acquired functional capabilities of the cancerous cell that allow malignant growth to do something active that normal growth cannot do, and to do them chronically rather than through the careful orchestrated activities of cells and organs in the body. Now, these capabilities are acquired through the enabling characteristics of the last 2 hallmarks. Hallmark number 9, genome instability and mutation. Malignant growth is, as most know, an illness of mistakes in our genome. It's these mutations that create the capabilities of the malignant growth. And unfortunately, mutations lead to more mutations as chaos within the cells increase. This instability also allows malignant growth to adapt. If a cell acquires a mutation that allows it to grow faster, survive longer, and multiply more, it has a selective advantage over other cells and will, in a Darwinian way, outgrow and overpower the others. Nothing is better at growing than a cancer cell. And therefore, the other cells, the normal cells, will eventually be pushed out. And then the final hallmark number 10. Tumor-promoting inflammation. The second enabling characteristic is tumor-promoting inflammation. Inflammation is an immune response to tissue damage and a necessary process in wound healing. In response to inflammation, cells travel to the necessary location, start to divide, and make blood vessels. In other words, they do many of the things malignant growth needs in order to grow larger. Because the inflammation in malignant growth becomes chronic, it is sometimes called a wound that doesn't heal. Perhaps our economy, dependent as it is on continuous growth, could also be described as an open wound economy. It is as if we're wounded, but we're not really. So those are the 10 hallmarks of malignant growth. Although the cancer cells contain the mutations that are driving the disease, tumors are not bags of cancer cells. There is really a complex microenvironment that involves a great number of recruited, corrupted, and reprogrammed normal cells. These are not cancerous themselves, but they still work together with cancerous cells in facilitating their harmful growth. Like the cells that build the blood vessels in angiogenesis, and the immune cells that create the inflammatory environment. Any therapy against cancer must also deal with these recruited cells, which makes things much more complex. Interestingly, the current situation is that for each of the hallmarks, there are now medicines and treatments. Unfortunately, cancer is often able to eventually resist and adapt to the treatments, and as a result, sometimes even becomes more deadlier. But at the moment, research is trying to figure out how, by combining different treatments, they might create an enduring effect. And just like the hallmarks, these treatments will show us certain aspects of how to overcome malignant growth. I believe that if we are willing to listen to what the hallmarks of malignant growth whisper into our ears, a balanced relationship with this planet is still possible. People, get ready. It did become a funny film. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard, huh?